Ministers are planning to ramp up the number of reassessments which are carried out on the 4.2 million people who receive handouts from the state because of ill health. These reforms, we're told, are part of efforts to find billions of pounds of saving for the taxpayer. Let's talk about this with Rachael Walker. Rachael is founder of the Campaign for Better Policy, a social and welfare policy think tank. Good evening, Rachael.
Good evening.
On the surface, it seems like Labour is the continuity Conservative Party. Is this more austerity, or are there really enough people pretending to be sick to justify another crackdown?
Well, yes, I would agree. It's these are some the increase in welfare spending and the amount of people that we have on ill health benefits and disability benefits are basically Tory chickens coming home to roost. We've cut welfare spending and benefits for 15 years. And what we're now seeing as a result, because we know poverty drives ill health, we see more people are sicker, more people are unable to work because of ill health and disability. And yet again, we've got a government that are trying to fix this problem by cutting welfare spending. Cutting welfare spending is not the way to improve health. Improving health is a way to improve health.
So it is possible then that people are sick because the health service they rely on is sick. The NHS is a shadow of its former self, and the care sector has been hollowed out.
Yeah, absolutely. Poverty causes ill health. It's as clear-cut as climate change science. Fossil fuels cause climate change. Poverty causes ill health. We've made people systematically poorer over the last 15 years, and then we're kind of surprised when ill health rises. You know, this isn't a surprise. We've predicted this for a long time. We knew ill health and disability was going to rise because we have systematically made people poorer. Now, the way to then deal with that, like I said, is through improvements in the health service. It's about funding the NHS. It's about providing good work. You cannot cut welfare and expect people to miraculously get themselves better.
Now, some people might be thinking, well, that's just, well, I mean, not necessarily for you, but for what I've just said, that's, you know, typical woke lefty is trying to defend people who are gaining the system. There must be a certain number of people who are having it on.
Well, the DWP doesn't seem to think so. So the DWP's own figures around personal independence payments tells that their fraud level is 0.0%. Nothing. And in fact, we know that we're knowingly underpaying about sort of 840 million, I think it is, in personal independence payments. So I think the government needs to decide which is it. Are people, you know, swinging the lead or pretending to be, you know, unwell, as Liz Kendall would have it? Or, you know, is there no fraud in the system? They do seem to contradict each other there.
Now, Liz Kendall, the Work and Pension Secretary, says that she wants to take people who have depression and other mental health conditions out of the eligibility criteria for personal independent payments. But can you accurately determine the severity of a mental health condition?
Absolutely not, no. But what this is doing is playing to a really classic deserving versus undeserving narrative in benefits. Visible disabilities are things people can sympathise with. They think they're but for the grace of God go I type thing. Mental disabilities or mental ill health, we talk about, you know, strength in mental ill health. We talk about talking about mental ill health. We all of these wonderful programmes where we're trying to raise awareness and help people with mental ill health. And then we go and punish people by talking about them in terms of being undeserving or pretending to be ill. It's really disappointing, extremely disappointing from the government.
The thing with mental illness is that there didn't used to be much incidence of it, but that was in a period when it was not acceptable to talk about or admit that you were suffering from it. By what measure do you think that our renewed or new rather willingness to actually discuss it as an issue and to admit that you are suffering from those problems, by what measure do you think that has actually increased the number of people who say, oh yes, I'm not just having a down day, I'm not just a bit, you know, down in the dumps today, I've actually got a mental illness?
I mean, it's got to be influenced, hasn't it? I mean, if you look at over the last 10 years, exactly like you say, we have brought mental ill health into the national conversation, and we do encourage people to come forward. When we talk about it in terms of disability benefits, like I said, the DWP tell us that 0.0% of personal independence claimants are fraudulent. So they therefore must be assessing people with these mental disabilities as eligible for and worthy of the benefits that we provide that give people support for the cost of disability. So we know that, yes, being out in the open about mental ill health is nothing but good. But then we absolutely contradict ourselves by saying, yes, please do talk about being, mental ill health and come and get help, but we're not going to pay for it because we don't actually think it's true. So, they really need to pick a lane when it comes to things like mental ill health.
It's worth actually talking about the numbers here, how much money we're talking about, because PIP claimants, that's personal independence payments, they receive a maximum of £184 a week, and that is for the most severe disabilities. That's under £10,000 a year, and that payment will not rise in April by 1.7% like other benefits. It doesn't sound like an amount that could allow somebody to live a life of Riley. Is the inference by the government that people are in large numbers choosing to live on £184 a week as a lifestyle choice?
Well, that's what they would have you believe, certainly. When we talk about moralising, things like that, we talk about people having benefits as a lifestyle choice. It is not. Disability and ill health is not a lifestyle choice. Personal independence payments are payments made in recognition of the extra costs of having a disability. 16% of personal independence claimants work. People have disabilities, have physical, mental, lots of just different types of disabilities, and it's a recognition of the extra costs that causes. It's £184 a week. But we can freeze it. That's fine. We froze LHA rates and the welfare bill went up. We could cap it. We could limit it like we do with the benefit cap or with the two-child limit. We've been trying to cut the welfare bill by trimming the amount that we pay for 15 years, and it has continued to rise. Kind of the definition of insanity, isn't it? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. The Tories weren't able to cut the welfare bill with all of the austerity measures that they put into place. I don't know why the new government think that they can do this by once again trying to fix a fundamental problem by looking at the wrong end of the system. It's not about how much we pay out. It's about the poverty that people are living in the first place that gives them the ill health.
Now, a lot of people who are at home, who are suffering in one way or another, would actually like to go and get some work for all of the benefits that would come from that. And the government says it's determined to get those with mental health conditions and disabilities, physical disabilities, into work. But is it easy for a person with one of those conditions to find work?
No, not whatsoever. I mean, in a time when we've got more flexibility and more options than ever before, people work from home, people work remotely, people, work incredibly flexibly. There are a limited number of opportunities for people to work around the needs that their disability presents. And that's part of the fundamental problems. Employers they're not inflexible because they don't care. Employments and small businesses in particular are running on a shoestring at the moment, and they can't afford the type of flexibility that's needed to get more people with disabilities into work. But no, work isn't as freely available as some would have us think. People with disabilities are not invisible. They would love to work dearly. I'm sure most people would. But they need good work that pays well, that compensates and understands their disability, rather than putting them in this binary situations whether you're either ill and on benefits or you're in work and you're treated like the rest of the able-bodied population regardless.
New claimants have to undergo what's called a work capability assessment, don't they? That's to see if they're actually capable of working.
Yes.
Who's carrying out these assessments? In what way are they qualified to give a medical opinion?
Well, it varies, and it's been controversial on a number of occasions over the last 15 years because private companies have been delivering these assessments. The DWP have done some, but right now we also know that the DWP is particularly strained when it comes to staffing. We know that waiting times for disability benefits are extensive. Mandatory reconsiderations can take up to a year. So kind of regardless of who's doing it, the government tells us that everybody who is claiming PIP should be claiming PIP. There is no fraud. and, B, they're telling us that they've got it right. So it's incredibly difficult to work out exactly what the government thinks they're going to be able to achieve by cutting this particular aspect of welfare spending. Assessments will continue to go through. They will continue to assess people as per the rules. If those rules change, then we will see assessments sort of changing, but we won't know that for another couple of weeks until the government's green paper is announced.
And I've heard of people have called me on this show and said that they've gone through an assessment, and the assessment came back that they were perfectly fine and can go and do most jobs, but they are people who are confined to a wheelchair, and they have other issues that aren't changing. Mm-hmm. And that would completely prevent them from. I mean, anybody with half a brain would be able to figure out that they're not able to actually do work that these assessors say that they can. So, are there targets that assessors have to meet in order to, keep the government contract?
I'm not aware of any specific targets like that, but I do know that they are scrutinised and, decisions are looked at periodically to ensure that they are within guidelines, etc. But like I say, I mean, I know I keep saying the same thing, but the government tells us that everybody claiming PIP is eligible. So where are these cuts going to come from? If everybody claiming should be claiming, then they're going to have to cut money from people who are eligible. There isn't another way around it.
Now, the government says that they want to get people into work. To what extent is the focus on forcing people into work under threat of punishment, or helping people into work by offering support?
Depending on what they want to do with what the government wants to do with disability benefits, they could incentivise work by increasing allowances given to job seekers, and they could, I can't believe I'm about to say this, disincentivise ill health and disability by cutting disability benefits. And we know in reality that that's not how it works whatsoever. But this is part carrot, part stick, I guess, but you can't nudge people out of ill health. You can't nudge people with policies out of disability. People have disabilities. And even if we do move millions of people from personal independence payments into work, PIP is an in-work benefit. The PIP claim will not stop. The disability does not go away once somebody is employed. I think it's a fundamental misunderstanding from, I don't know where it's coming from, but that people will move from PIP to work and therefore will end their PIP claims. That's not how it works. It won't save that much money.
So there's almost no fraud in the system. Mm-hmm. The Tories tried to reduce the benefits bill and failed after 14 years of austerity, and yet the current Labour government seems to be, on the surface, attempting to do the same thing which previously didn't work. Does this have the smell of a government that is just trying to get positive headlines for, because if there's anything that the right-wing press like more than cracking down on benefits claimants, then I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Yeah, it is disappointing. I mean, you're right. We've tried cutting the welfare bill time and time again, and it continues to rise. The only way to genuinely deal with the welfare bill is to look at why people need social security, why they need welfare in the first place. That's growing wealth inequality, increasing poverty's never been higher. And yet we think the solution to this is cutting money to people living in poverty. It's madness. I'm starting to think that there's connections between poverty and ill health are not fully understood. The science is in. We know poverty causes ill health, and yet we still seem to be pitching it as some sort of moral failure. It is a disappointing sort of policy, but we know that these are headline-grabbing figures when welfare spending is so high. But social security spending should be high. It's a symptom of a supportive country that understands that people need various resources in order to live equal, dignified lives. Cutting the welfare bill tells us more about ourselves than a high welfare bill does.
Good to talk to you, Rachel. Thanks very much for your time.